Coming up on Backchecking the Bolts.
At what point during the playoffs were you thinking, we really got a shot at this?
I think it's when we swept Montreal. When we swept Montreal and the way we did it with the comeback win in Game 3, I just felt like we're just so strong mentally. You know, we were such a strong team. I just felt like we were just another level. It was just another level. And we didn't think it was going to be that easy, obviously, with playing Philly next. That was a war, but just felt like there was a true sense that it was the whole package. The way Boone was playing, the defensive core, how tough they were, the details they were doing, and then obviously the top guys were being the top guys. And then you had Andrew Chuck and Tim Taylor and guys just grinding it out. And I just felt like we had everything. It was built to be a Stanley Cup winning team. And just could see it the more it was advancing.
Welcome to Backchecking the Bolts. Backchecking the Bolts is your cup of coffee to get you the latest on the Tampa Bay Lightning. Join host Jason Linkus and the managing editor of Raw Charge, Justin Godfrey, as they break down the Lightning's most recent games and go beyond the highlights, telling you what the box scores didn't. It's time to drop the puck.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Backchecking the Bolts. I'm your host, Jason Linkus, and you're probably wondering why I'm flying solo today. Well, my co-host, Justin Godfrey, is somewhere in North Carolina right now, probably enjoying a spa, so he's going to take a little well-deserved time off. But today's a different episode. It's not going to be talk about the Lightning right now. We had a chance to talk to former member of the Tampa Bay Lightning, member of the 2004 Stanley Cup team, Eric Perrin. Now, when I used to do interviews back on the radio over 20 years ago, by the time I introduced someone, I was lucky if I had 10 minutes to talk to them. By the time they answered their first question, I was looking at the clock. My producer was telling me how much time I had left. It was hard to really dig deep into interviews. Well, podcasting has changed that. And Eric was gracious enough to join us yesterday on the podcast, and he gave us over an hour of his time. For those of you who don't know Eric, as I mentioned, he was on the 2004 Stanley Cup team. He led the University of Vermont along with teammate Martin St. Louis to the Frozen Four in 1997, but he also had some lows. He was undrafted. After his breakthrough NHL season, you had the lockout where the NHL was shut down for an entire season. We're going to talk about all that and his commitment to going to the Liiga league over in Finland, where he is the highest scoring foreign-born player in league history. We wanted to thank Eric for taking the time to join us. We hope you enjoyed the interview, and here's our conversation with Eric Perrin. Here on Backchecking the Bolts, we are pleased to bring you an interview with former member of the Tampa Bay Lightning, Stanley Cup winner Eric Perrin. Eric, how you doing today, bud?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Happy to be here.
I'm assuming you are a Canadiens fan, correct? He's got the Habs Cup. So I do have to ask you this.
That was one of my youth parents. You know, they knew I had a little bit of a thing with the Canadians, and very thoughtful. But yes, I can't hide it. Of course, you know, we grew up with Marty, and just that was our team. And so now I got Marty coaching, and I'm just like, hey, you know, got to support.
When you were growing up, who was a bigger rival for you as a kid? Was it the Nordiques or was it Boston?
It was definitely the Nordiques. The Nordiques was the big rivalry. 2 hours up the road to Quebec City. I mean, we lived for those moments as kids, watching those games, always Saturday night. And, you know, it was always intense. It was always a war between you know, and you see it still on YouTube today. There's video of those big brawls they had back in the day. So, I mean, no, it was fun. It was definitely something we missed when the Nordiques left, you know.
That was, you mentioned the YouTube channels that you could see. The Good Friday Massacre is one that always comes to mind. The big brawls that I just remember them jumping into Sports Center, stopping Sports Center and saying, "Hey, you got to see this. This is crazy." The Hunters, that was great hockey back in the day. And growing up in Montreal, I always wondered, as big of a rivalry as Boston was, how much hatred there was for the Nordiques.
Yeah, I just a tad more. I mean, the Bruins were obviously the Bruins. You know, they were not liked. They were hated, obviously, by us in Montreal. But when the Nordiques were there, obviously, I mean, Boston, you know, they were around longer. They were the original six, you know, so there was that going on. You know, and when the Nordiques came, I think it took a bit of time, but it didn't take that much time to create a big rivalry. So no, it was, like you said, that was exciting times. You know, hockey was just different, and it was a different feel, you know.
Yeah, the old Adams division rivalries. I mean, that the Adams division, you had to literally fight your way out of there in order to get to the conference finals against the Patrick division. Eric, I
Definitely.
do have to ask you this question. You had your youth career in Montreal. What led you to the University of Vermont?
Well, that started. It's funny how it started. I lived in Regina, Saskatchewan, when I was 7 to 10 years old, and at the time, the midget AAA team, Lac Saint Louis, came for the Air Canada Cup. They won the Quebec, their midget AAA championship, and then all the best from every province met up in Regina and played for the Air Canada Cup. And on that team was Ian Boyce. Ian Boyce was a kid from Montreal and stayed at our house during the tournament. And so my dad got, real friendly with the dad. My dad was taking care of the team because we're from Montreal originally, and, met up with all of them and was talking to his dad about his plans of continuing his hockey to U.S. college. And so that kind of got my dad's attention a bit. So we kind of I was still young, but it was something that he just kept following. It was funny because we had Claude Lapointe too that was living at our house. Then they both took the different routes. Claude played Major Junior for Laval, where I'm from, and Ian took off to University of Vermont. And so that but my dad was always stress school, he said, you can't rely on hockey. It's, especially at the time, I was a small player and I was developing something with Marty, more of a package deal. We were playing together every year and both our dads together and kind of shared the same philosophy. Right. That school was definitely going to be important for us, not knowing what hockey was going to hold. It was tougher for younger players to get in there. And so that's the route we took. I mean, it all stemmed from there and just following those footsteps. And we went, when it came time, we played our major AAA and time to get drafted major junior and make that decision. It was tough. We got a lot of, we got approached by a lot of major junior teams, good offers, but with that heavy 80-game schedule, it was tough to go to school. We went to visit University of Maine. We went to visit University of Vermont, and it was back and forth, and we just felt Vermont was a place for us we could kind of change the culture and make a bigger difference. So. Yeah.
Well, change the culture. You guys did. You won your first ECAC championship in school history, but you also made the Frozen Four. And I've played at the UVM golf outing a number of times up at Vermont Country Club. There isn't an outing that goes by where the quote unquote hand pass isn't mentioned at least one time. I know it didn't end the way you wanted to against Colorado College, but tell us what that experience was like playing in the Frozen Four.
Yeah, it was a bit surreal. we never did Marty and I, we didn't expect like maybe one day that's where we'd wind up with the school and get that far. We knew it was a lot of schools and a lot of talent. Um, but once we had Tim Thomas, and we kind of just felt like, we had a chance. We had such a great class. Like our class of 97 was just so strong. We were 7 of us and all like-minded, very, very focused. And so we knew we had a chance, but going through that moment was surreal getting there. I mean, with the regionals and winning the way we did against Lake Superior State and then getting to the Final Fours, interesting experience how it started with, you remember they drilled a hole in the ice right through the pipe and kind of destroyed the ice. And we had to deal with that. They delayed the game, I think, a couple hours. And so,
Wow.
yeah, I flooded the whole ice. And so and during our game, the ice wasn't that great. And we wound up going to double overtime, almost triple. We were, I think, less than a minute from going to triple overtime. So ice was getting worse and worse. And, but, it was just, I don't know. It just made it even more special. We were dealing with all kinds of stuff and just like to stay mentally focused. And we had great coaches with Gilligan and Grillo and Gervais and just like keeping young kids just calm as possible that, young kids that weren't supposed to be there, really. So no, that was special for us. I mean, Vermont's not a big state. And they were showing like from north to south how much the whole state was watching and rooting. So that was special. Yeah.
After you left UVM, tell us about your path. You ended up in the IHL. You went undrafted. I got to ask you this first. The game has changed so much from the late 90s till today. Really, you can point to the lockout as where the game turned to more of a speed game. Do you think scouts would look at you differently today than they did back in the late 90s?
Yeah, I truly believe that for sure. And I think that would have helped the start of my career. If I speak for me individually alone, I think Marty's and I's story is a bit different once we hit pro. But yeah, coming out of college with no real interest was really hard for both of us. We went undrafted. We relied on camp invites. Marty went to Ottawa. I went to Montreal. But we could see like we weren't in the plans. You could see right away. Like they had their guys, and it was gonna tough to crack the lineup, and even in American League. And so we had deals in the old IHL, and we went there, and I felt like that was probably the worst thing for me as a player.
Really?
With my personality, because I was, I wouldn't say I was unfocused, but easily distracted, so it was a league of older players that were on their way out of the NHL, very seasoned players, versus the AHL, which was all prospects, all young kids trying to make their way to the NHL. So we're dealing with two totally different leagues. And I felt like there was different goals, from us to them, and kind of got sucked into stuff a little bit, and I felt like that's my story. I know for me, like I felt like, I owned that. I owned up to that a long time ago, and kind of like lost my way a little bit as to what it took to really take the next step, especially being undersized at that time, right? So you always had to like show extra, like, and be a little bit more ready than others. And I thought that's where Marty did a great job with his personality. It was a lot easier for him to do those things, but he did it, religiously. He was good. He got his opportunity and he took it. So I felt like, but definitely I feel like if the game was different, I might have been in a different situation at the start of my career, which would have helped me probably grow younger. It took me a little bit longer for me to mature and get back on the right track.
Well, after you left the IHL, you went overseas. You went over into the Liiga league. And do you think that's where you really found your game before you came back to play with the Hershey Bears?
Yeah, definitely. I left there after I did I tore my ACL my last year in the IHL. So that was kind of like rock bottom for me as far as like, what am I doing now? Like now it's a huge injury. And it happened early in the season. So what's next? Where's the interest going to be? I didn't have bad season the year before. It's not that I was playing bad, but it gets tougher to find a job. And so I felt like I had to do a whole reset. I got a new agent, and Bill Zito stepped up for me and told me to trust him. And so he sent me to Finland. And he was doing that with a couple players, just like Tim Thomas and Brian Rafalski. That's what he had a strong connection in Finland and knew what they were doing. They were developing players and helping them, find their way. And that's what happened to me. And he told me straight up, he says, you're going to have to do this for 3 years. And then I'm telling you, you'll be a different player and we'll get you something. So that was tough to trust that, but I did. And he was right on the money. I mean, that's where I really matured. And luckily I met my wife before that, that she's obviously been the rock for me, like to kind of transform my ways, to get focused and stuff like that. So, but yeah, definitely Finland was what, and Bill doing what he did.
You said your game changed over in Finland. How did it change? Did you become more of a two-way player? Were you more disciplined? How did your game change?
I was always a good two-way player. That was my game. I was always a reliable center, both sides of the ice. I always took pride in that, being good at both ends. So that wasn't the issue for me. I think it was more the discipline of being ready, the discipline of working out. I got so much stronger. I got more powerful. And then I was just mentally just more focused. I was there for a reason. I wasn't in Finland just to have fun. I was there for a reason. I was on a mission. And then during those 3 years, that's when Marty started taking steps too. So we were in contact and talking, and I was seeing what he's doing. So obviously there was some tough moments. I won't lie, it didn't start off really great in Finland. Had a pretty crazy coach to start off with. But it got better. But there were some times, in the worst team in the league, and you're like, what am I doing? What am I doing? Is this? So you have your tough moments mentally, like any athlete, where you start doubting yourself. You start, is this worth it? It's like, so, but, you rely on your girlfriend at the time, became my wife, and then you rely on your family, your parents, just say, hey, you gotta, keep believing in yourself. So no, it was good. I mean, in the end, that's what, and then, Bill said it would, and he got me a contract with the Lightning coming out of Finland.
So tell us about how you got that contract. You mentioned it was after your third year in Finland. Was that correct?
Yeah. I had a really strong year, a year of not just producing, but leadership. Brought a team that wasn't supposed to make the playoffs, and we almost beat the top team, went to game 7. And so got a lot of, I don't know, felt really good about it. I was a top leading scorer after that series. Just, everything was going right. And Billy said I had 2 options. I had the Devils and the Lightning interested. And so I had 2 contracts available. And so that was kind of surreal for me. That was my first NHL deal. I was At the time, that was after 6 years pro. And so, yeah, I was excited. I obviously, on top of that, the idea of like joining Marty in Tampa, I thought that, obviously they don't mind the size factor, and I said, if they believe in Marty, I think, I know I can bring a lot of similar things that he did, and so that's what made my decision to pick Tampa, when after Finland.
Well, in 2004, you got called up to the Lightning. I'm sure you'll remember this till the day you die. Where were you when you got the call, and what was that emotion like?
Yeah, I have to tell you, man, I've went and talked to a lot of people, like motivational stuff, and basically that season is my whole motivational speech. I signed with Tampa, but I had a great camp, but Tampa didn't have a team, farm team. So they were sharing with Colorado and Hershey, and then they were no, they didn't. So they sent 6 of us to Hershey, and that was mainly Colorado, right? It was all Colorado. And then they sent a couple to Hamilton, who was sharing with Montreal. And then after that, they sent a couple to Utah. And I can't remember who was with the Grizzlies then. So, yeah, they sent me to Hershey, and it was a Colorado guy, an old video coach for Colorado, coaching and stuff. So, and you go there, and they have no clue who I am. I'm coming from Finland, and they couldn't care less about Tampa, what they're saying, right? And then for us, we had Shane Willis, Sheldon Keefe, guys that had played already with the Lightning. And so, I mean, I took a back seat. I took a back seat to everybody, and I started the year in the stands. I was eating popcorn the first year, I did the warm up, and they told me, no, you're not playing. And so it was a rough start. I didn't know what the heck. I'm like, man, again, what's going on? And then you had the veteran rule at the time. You couldn't play more than a certain amount of vets who had over 300 games pro. And so I fell under that. So yeah, it was a tough start. Coach didn't believe in me. And so one vet got called up, and I got into the lineup, 4th line. And obviously, I got the line of, you're not better than this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, and so I said, okay, but I'm going to come to practice and just show this guy, that's probably, I had harsher words, but, I did. That's, I just climbed my way up, and I just kept doing better and better. I mean, I was producing on the 4th line, a goal here, assist here, a goal here. And then I got moved up to the 3rd line, and then it just picked up from there. I mean, I was playing with Brad Larson and Steve Moore, who got called up with Colorado, and that was the year he got, punched by Bertuzzi and the whole thing. But we were killing it before he got called up. Then I got moved up to the 2nd line. I was playing with Shane Willis, and obviously I just was on a mission. And I would say by Christmas break, I think I was 2nd, 3rd scoring the league. So
wow,
I got chosen. Yeah, I got chosen for starter for the All-Star game. And so I climbed the ladder, man. I did it, and I didn't stop. And so that's my kind of like, I tell people, like, you just don't know how. Put your head down and put some work in, and and then I became a leader. I was an assistant captain before the end of the year, and but I could see. So we go back. I'm like, a lot of my buddies are getting called up and down, but Lightning, I think the Lightning that year broke the record for the least amount of games lost for injuries.
Not exactly something a guy in the minors wants to hear.
Right. Everybody in the minors, somebody's going to get hurt here. No, I mean, it was crazy. Everybody stayed healthy. And so it was tougher to get the call up, and I think Shane got it, Sheldon got it, and I was just kind of like, man, wouldn't it be nice, just to get one game, just like a game, and I knew I was playing well enough anyways, which was good. And I said, it's all you can do and just try to control what I could control. But now we were down to the last 10 games of the year in Hershey, and we were in a battle for the last playoff spot. I think we were one point off. And I said, there's no way I'm getting called up now. They're not going to let me leave. But Tampa had 4 games left to the season and they called me up. That was, we were in Wilkes-Barre and that was pretty cool. It was after the game in Wilkes-Barre. We're on the way back on the bus and I took a pretty bad hit and I was feeling it in my shoulder a little bit. Nothing crazy. And the trainer said, I think he's like, no, you're good, homie. You're good. That's what the trainer would say. You're good, homie. I'm like, what the heck are you talking about, man? I'm like, I need some ice. He's like, listen to me. You're good. You're good. Let's go on the bus. And I'm like, I just don't, what's his problem? And obviously he knew, But as we got close to Hershey, coach just made the announcement in front of everybody. It was like, it was kind of like an example for everybody, So I was 28 years old at the time, and I think he wanted to, especially the Colorado kids, the young guys, and take example of what can happen. And so it was pretty cool how he announced it on the bus before we got to the rink. And so it was a special phone call to Dad for sure, But yeah, the next night I was playing in Tampa against Washington. And
The very next night.
Yeah, very next night. That's why the trainer was like, you ain't going to feel anything tonight,
So you got a chance to play the last 4 games of the year with the Lightning.
Yeah.
And then you went into the playoffs. You played, I think, 12 playoff games that year. When you first met Coach Tortorella, what did he tell you? Did it give you confidence? Did it give you fear? What did he say to you?
He gave me all of it. He gave me all of it. It was, I came in the afternoon, like a little bit right after everybody had their lunch, morning practice lunch. Everybody was gone. And I got to the rink, dropped off my equipment, and they said, Torts wants to see you in his office. And so I went over to Torts, and he was happy to see me. And I never really got to talk to Torts that much, from training camp and stuff, but super happy to see me. He's like, the first thing he said was, I want you to know that you're not here as a reward for your good play down there. You're here because there's a legit chance for you to stay in this roster. And I was like, holy crap. And cause I truly thought in my mind, it was going to be 1 or 2 games. Thank you. Or like reward, like he said. And because Hershey needed me, and Tampa was battling the Red Wings for a President's Trophy. It was that good of a season. I said, these guys don't need me. Why would he want to make a change at this time of year with the team? But he said, I need more speed on my 4th line. It's not a role that you're used to, but I want to see what you can do. He says, I'm going to give you 2 games to show me what you can do. So he's like, then he goes, but I want you to have fun. Have fun with it. And I'm like,
Sure.
Yeah. So no, that was good. It was great. I mean, he gave me a little bit of pressure, but at the same time, kind of like, hey, but you need to enjoy it. Enjoy the moment and all that. So, and then I had obviously Marty in my ear, helping out with the mental part of it, that what I can expect and how it's going to go. And he was right on, like he was, the game's going to be fast in the first period, and then you'll see everything is going to keep slowing down keep slowing down for you, So, I mean, that's exactly how it went. But anyways, I played my 2 games. After the second game, I can't remember the order of the games. They were all 4 home games. And after the second game, nobody came to see me after. Nobody said anything. I asked Mari, what do I do? He's like, just go to a hotel. Just go, do your business, come back tomorrow. And that's what I did. I came back the next day. I was on the lineup for the 3rd game. And then same thing after the 3rd, I was on the lineup for the 4th game. But still nothing, not a word. And now the season's over. And still now that we have 2 days off. And nobody said anything. So I was like, interesting. And my wife is in Hershey, like, so? And I said, I have nothing to tell you. I have nothing to tell you. Nobody said anything. And I said, I am certainly not going into the coach's office and ask what's going on. So I said, no news is good news. But I showed up after the 2 days off, and Torts had the lineup to start the playoffs, and I was 4th line center. And I just couldn't believe what was going on. It was just all surreal for me, like the way the season started, eating popcorn in Syracuse, and to now I'm starting the playoffs for the Tampa Bay Lightning, one of the top teams in the NHL. So, yeah, it was my life changed a lot in a whole year coming from Finland to where I was. And it was tough to take it all in because it was happening so fast. It was just happening so fast. First NHL game. Now I'm going to start the first playoff game. And so, yeah, it was crazy.
When did you realize the Lightning had a chance to really win the cup? At what point during the playoffs were you thinking, we really got a shot at this?
I think it's when we swept Montreal. When we swept Montreal and the way we did it with the comeback win in Game 3, I just felt like, man, we're just so strong mentally. We're such a strong team. I just felt like we're just another level. It was just another level. And we didn't think it was going to be that easy, obviously, with playing Philly next. That was a war. But it just felt like there was a true sense that it was the whole package. The way Happy Boone was playing, the defensive core, how tough they were, the details they were doing, and then obviously the top guys were being the top guys, and then you had Andrechuk and Tim Taylor and guys just grinding it out, and I just felt like we had everything. It was built to be a Stanley Cup winning team, and just could see it the more it was advancing. Yeah.
The Lightning win the Stanley Cup. What did you do with your day with the cup?
Yeah, I had a short day. I had a kind of a half day. It was being a late edition and all that, but we didn't waste time. I had the guys with the cup meet me at a photo studio. Just want to make sure I had some good pictures with family, and so we did that, and then the best thing I could think of doing was rewarding my dad and putting it in my backyard where I grew up.
That's
I didn't
cool.
have much time, but that I had to just have it there and just have everybody that was kind of like an influence in my hockey career come and just be there. And we did that. We had all my youth coaches and people that just, were part of our lives, close friends that played with us. And it was a lot of phone calls, but it wasn't anything crazy. It was just having the people with me that mattered the most throughout the journey. And I could see, to have my parents, what is, having the cup in my backyard, I would have never dreamed this in my life, And my dad grew up living next to Henri Richard.
Really? He grew up
Yeah.
that close to him?
Yeah. Yeah, he lived right next door. He's got pictures with him in his living room when he was a kid. And, so obviously my dad and he played. My dad played till high juniors and stuff like that. So he was a hockey guy. And so, no, it was like, that was a special moment. I think that's what mattered most to me. It was awesome. It was awesome.
So you win the Stanley Cup, and then comes the NHL lockout. It had to have been a little bit surreal. You make it, and now you don't know what to do. And the one question I've always wanted to ask to players like yourself, were you in scramble mode trying to find a place to play? Because for those of us following it, we kept on hearing, oh, he might go overseas. He might try to go to another league close by, the AHL. What was going through your mind, and how quickly did you have to make a decision so you could continue getting paid?
Right. Yeah, what was heartbreaking for me is my contract was 2 years. And the second year, it was the team decision it was an option for the team. And if they picked up the option, it was a one-way contract, NHL, right? And they picked it up during the summer. They picked up my option. So I was like, oh, wow, this is, one-way, contract. That was a big deal. And then the lockout came and squashed all of that. So for me, a kid that was just breaking through at 28, that year really, really crushed me. It crushed me because I felt like the wind in my sails, and I was just, now I knew I was ready to take an even bigger step, right? Like be an even bigger factor for this team. I was ready. And so, yeah, that was tough. But I knew when it happened, I knew I had to fall back. I didn't want to go overseas. I just came from there, 3 years in Finland. I didn't want to go back. I was just, I was in the North American type hockey mode, and I wanted to keep it. I didn't want to lose it. And so I contacted Hershey right away. I said, hey, I want to play. I want to play in Hershey. I said, I don't care how much. If you can give me this, I'll be happy. And they said, yep, we're doing it. And so I did it before Tampa could find out. And then because that year they started their own with Springfield.
Gotcha.
That year, the lockout year, they went with Springfield, and that was good. That was their team. And I told Jay at the time, I said, listen, Jay, Hershey did amazing things for me and helped me set this up, and I want to go back there. It's done. And he's like, okay, that's fine. So I could easily have gone to Europe or whatever, I just want to stay and be ready, and I know I'll play there and whatever. But yeah, no, it was, so I was good there, but disappointed obviously of the lockout thing. So, but my story is all over the place because after the lockout, I, got some frustrations a little bit.
It would be only natural to have those. I couldn't imagine being at the high of all highs as an athlete, winning a championship, and then the league doesn't exist for a year. That had to have been crushing. But you came back, you went to Hershey, then you played another year at the Lightning. You played 2 with Atlanta. Now with Atlanta, you played 2 full seasons, right?
Well, so funny thing is, like, there's a little after the lockout year, Tampa came back and offered me a 2-way contract. So now I lost my 1-way, and then they offered me 2-way again. And in the new CBA, they had a rule that if you sign a 2-way contract in the minors, you couldn't make more than $75,000 if you were gonna not go through waivers being called up and down. If you made over 75, you'd have to go through waivers. And Tampa wasn't going to budge from that 75. And I said to them that I'm almost 30 years old now. I got a mortgage up north. I got to pay for another apartment. I got I have 2 kids. And I'm like, I said, this isn't a good deal for me. You know, it was a bit, and I was very disappointed in the 2-way contract. You know, I said, well, what changed that you don't want to give me a 1-way now? You know, there'll be injuries, you know, after a lockout year. So, and I said, I can't risk my year on injuries and then being called up, you know? And so I that's why I went to Switzerland. So I don't know if you, yeah, I went to
Okay,
Switzerland
so that's
instead of
SC
signing.
Bern.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I made that decision. It was hard. It was hard. I just felt, I didn't feel betrayed, but I just felt like a lack of confidence in me again, that I wasn't able to do the job. And then I saw that they signed some other players too. And I was like, well, I don't understand this, you know? Yeah, it was a bit tricky situation, but I went to Switzerland and I hated my experience. Hockey was okay, but just I didn't like the culture. And I thought I was doomed with Torts. I think he was mad that I left. And so I said, they're not going to take me back. And I signed 2 years in Germany. And when I came back in the summer, they changed the rule to 95,000 in the minors because they saw they lost a bunch. I wasn't the only one. I mean, there's a bunch of good players that left because it was, you know, kind of an unfair rule for, you know, players that were trying to make their way up. But it's still a business, unfortunately, and making a living and stuff. That summer, I made the decision to, well, let's call Tampa and see what they say. And they said, well, yeah, we'll sign you. They signed me to a 1-year, 2-way. I said, I'll try it. And I made the team out of the training camp. So it was a weird at first with Torch, but he was great. He took me in and he says, listen, clean slate. You know, I understood what you did. I wasn't happy about it, but let's move on. So, and now I had a really good training camp. I was, you know, I felt good and made the team. And so that's when I played that full season. And then, yep.
Led you to Atlanta.
Man, it was tough. We had I know Jay Fieser was sharing duties with Claude Loisel at the time with negotiating, but you know, not getting into too much detail, but I did not get a good feel out of I had a really strong year with Torts. I averaged 18 minutes of ice time per game. And that's making the team on the 4th line, you know, and I just felt like his trust in me just grew throughout the year. I was playing big minutes for him. I was like the fill-in guy for guys that weren't performing. I'll play with Vinny and Marty, then I'd wind up with Richie and Fedotenko, and he'd bench this guy, and I have to be ready to go left wing, right wing, center. I was PP, I was PK, I was like a, you know, utility guy everywhere. And I was just always ready, you know, and I was dialed in and I just felt like, you know, my value just went up and I was feeling good. And so when came negotiation time, I said, listen, I've never had longer than a 1-year contract. I would like security a little bit, 2 or 3 years. I'm not asking for a huge bump, but something. And so, because I knew I was in a position to be greedy, you know, I got my first year. And what I thought I was asking for was far from greedy. It was just security for my family, for me, a little peace of mind. And they weren't budging from 1 year. And I wanted more. And so you know, I felt like with the season I had, somebody had to see my value of what I did. And yeah, and then Bob was a friend. I was helping his hockey camps, and he was asking me, why isn't Tampa signing you? He said, well, if they don't sign you, I'm pretty sure that we will. And you know, and Tampa didn't budge until the day before July 1st. And I just felt a bit like loyalty was one-way street a bit. It was take this, and I know they had signed other guys, and it's not just the offer; it was the words that were being said. It goes deeper. You start feeling devalued, and I didn't like that part of things. It really, as a human, if you would have just approached me with like the truth and like but to devalue somebody to try to take a deal, I felt, it didn't feel right. So it is what it is, but that's the business of it. So
How was the experience in Atlanta? You played 2 full seasons there, and you were
yeah,
averaging almost 80 games a year.
yeah, I was, the first year, especially, I got a great opportunity. I started third line, and unfortunately, Bob got fired after 6 games, but Waddell took over and reassured me that I was going to be a big part of the team, and I wound up playing with Hossa and Kozlov most of the year, and limited time on power play, but 5-on-5. That was the guy supporting those guys, and that was a great opportunity. I had 45 points and had a really good feel. And then the following year was a tougher year with John Anderson coming in. I just felt like I wasn't, I don't know why, his type of player, because he's had my type of player everywhere he went. So I felt he was pushing some other guys, and it kind of went down a bit. I could see the writing on the wall a little bit. So
You went to the KHL for a year before you went back to the Liiga League. What was the year like in the KHL? And I have to ask you about one game, doing some research. Was there a game that you were involved in with over 700 penalty minutes?
yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah, even
How
I
does that
fought.
happen?
Even I fought.
How many times?
Just once. They kicked me out right
Wow.
away. I mean, so the whole game lasted 3.5 minutes. Then they stopped the game. Yeah.
What was the reaction from the league after having a game that was forced to be canceled because there weren't enough players to play?
Yeah, there were huge fines, a lot of suspensions. I don't know the exact details, but I was not happy with that. I'm like, what am I doing here again? There was one of those, this is not what I signed up for. But there was that team that it happened against. Vitiaz had that reputation, and there was like a bad blood between the two teams, and I just happened to show up in the middle of that. And but they always got. Remember, Brandon Sugden it was his first game. They had Chris Simon, Darcy Verreau. I can't remember, but they were just, they just had guys and they told them, what you got to do is just grab people and start fighting. And that's how they got paid. And so it was kind of like, just off-putting, but, you get the kick in the back and says, hey, go out there, fight somebody. And it was just, I think they just wanted the game over with. Everybody fight, everybody get off, and that's it. It was one shift after another. It was 5-on-5, another 4-on-4, 3-on-3, and then eventually everybody. And it was like crazy because you get kicked out, but everybody in the penalty box came out and fought again. So that's it. That's when they called it. Yeah.
Well, after 1 year in the KHL, you went back to Finland, and
yeah,
you are the highest scoring foreign-born player in the Liiga League. You had a great career in the Finnish league. For people who don't know much about the Finnish league, What is it like over there? I mean, from the fan experience to the playing experience, what's it like over there?
For me, I loved it. When I first went there, my first 3 years in Europe, um, the last place I played, but everywhere I played, I just loved the culture of people. It's kind of like quiet country, uh, safe, secure, um, great place to live. And I loved the style of the hockey. That's what I loved when I was there. I just loved the style. It's like at the time it was the closest style to North American hockey. A lot of the teams were going to smaller ice rinks. There were still a couple Olympic size ones, but everybody was shortening the rinks. They were pushing for more north south hockey, um, give and go and quick plays, and just fit my style so great. And that's why I struggled in Russia. I'm like, it was all individual. And I said, I don't play individual hockey. I can't, I don't have those kind of skills. And, but yeah, I loved it. I loved the people, and I had the kids, and, the fact that they could walk to school alone, bike, and take the city bus anywhere they wanted without a fear of anything. Kind of like when I grew up. So it was awesome experience for everyone. But yeah, I felt like when I went to Finland, that was my decision that this is where I'm going to finish playing. I just don't know when yet, but I was 34, I think 35 when I went, and I said, let's just see how it goes. And so yeah, I wound up doing nine more years, which was crazy, but I was just having fun and kept playing well.
What part of the game was hardest to keep up as you aged?
I feel like around the year 2016 to 18, I just felt like I felt that like a switch with the younger players, like that evolution where we were all going with the game, right? The way we were practicing, the small area games, the quickness of the plays, the decisions, and then the skills too. The kids were getting more skilled as they were coming in, and I was obviously getting older. I realized I wasn't the player I used to be, but I wasn't comparing myself, but I was just watching all of them, and I said, "This is crazy. The skill level is another notch." I remember I was in Turku in TPS, and Capo Caco came as a 16-year-old and played a game with me, and I was, I think, 41 at the time. He's 16 years old, and this kid is incredibly talented at 16, handling himself with grown men. And I said, yeah, the game has changed. It was the same with Alexander Barkov, came through. Patrick Laine did it at 16 also. Sebastian Aho. I got to see all those guys at a very young age, just progressing the way they were. I'm like, man, our game is changing. And it was cool to see, because a lot of Finns are behind that stuff. Incredible young players that came into the NHL just ready to play. So it's good.
You wrapped up your career in 2019. What's your favorite memory?
I have I have several, little memories, you know, um the cup year, obviously that's like the pinnacle of everybody. I felt like the way it happened for me was a bit different, with everything happening so fast, with first NHL game, first playoff, and all of a sudden I'm lifting the cup, and um, that was a wild ride of 2 months. But winning the championship in Finland was special. I've always wanted to do that with how many years I was there, and um, so that was a super cool moment. We had I think that team that I had there was the closest that I felt team-wise to anything that I've ever gone through. The closest one to that would have been our Final Four team, when we went to the Final Four. I mean, the Tampa team, maybe not, because for me, I got there so late, so I never felt, that I didn't go through the whole grind stuff of the whole season with those guys. So it makes it a different little bit of feeling, but yeah, that was special to me. Individual stuff, obviously, it's always special, in Finland when I broke all those records and stuff, and it's not just breaking the records. I felt like it was, what I loved about it was the feeling I got from away fans. I was getting cheered a lot by away fans, and that was like super special, when you get
First
that kind
time it
of
happened,
respect.
was it a little surreal?
Yeah. There was, everybody was clapping, and I'm like, oh man, okay, and you're waving, thanking, and that was cool. But I think having my parents at the last game in Finland, they were able to come and see that. That was cool too. That was fun. Good memory, just to like have them there. They were there from the first now to the last, and so that was a special moment. Yeah.
Eric, right now you're involved with the Daytona Ice Arena. You're the hockey
Yeah.
director and the arena manager, but it's more than just you. It's a family business. Your wife's involved, your son and daughter are involved. Tell everyone a little bit about what you're doing over there in Daytona.
Yeah, it's kind of a fluke because I wound up in Daytona just by vacationing here starting in 2016, in between my seasons. And I was coming here with my son was pretty young at the time. We were going to skate there and training. I was training and whatever. And we're doing mostly beach stuff. We just wanted a nice, relaxing summer before the tough Finnish winters, because those were insane.
You want to see
So
the
we
sun.
were, yeah, that's what I mean. We had to like get all the vitamin D we could to get through that. So no, that's mainly why we came down to Florida, and we had family friends that had a condo in Daytona. Everything was set up that way, and we did that for 3 summers. And so when I stopped playing, we went back. I didn't know what was next. I was thinking coaching. I had that in my mind for a little bit, but then I was like, man, I'm pretty tired. I'm pretty tired of the grind. And I started thinking that coaching is just another beast as well. And so I didn't know. I was hesitant, and I said, "But what can I do?" But I was going to the arena for my son, and the owners asked me, "Hey, man, what are you doing here? Like are you interested in maybe running this full time?" And so I kind of, I said this would be something different where I could be with my son and help him out and spend time. And I said, yeah, I think this is it. And I've always been a teacher. I was a phys ed grad, phys ed teacher. I did hockey camps my whole life. I've always been, it's in my blood kind of thing. And so I think that was my calling for a bit. And so that's what, there's parts of the job that I could go away with, with travel sports, but it's been awesome. It's been awesome working with the kids and growing a program to what we've brought it to in Daytona Beach, of all places. My wife will tell you she has no idea how she got dragged into it. She's like, I didn't ask for this. But she's like the rock because, she's an incredibly smart woman, and she handles all the employees and scheduling and, all the whatever you could think of. And she does a lot of my administrative stuff. And so then we convinced our daughter to come and help us with birthday parties and groups because we've grown it. So there's less time for my wife to handle some stuff. While my son, he's still playing. He played juniors in the NAL, and then he comes back in the summer and he runs all my goalie stuff. He does private lessons for goalies, helps out. So we got a like really kind of good reputation and building something here. And so it's pretty cool. I have the one thing I really like, I train like top end players that are playing college up north, pro, and then prep school and juniors. I mean, so I got a big skate every morning in the summer. And so that's been nice. And then I do summer camps, which I've grown like insane. I do 2 camps for the kids, and it's been going really well.
Well, if you look in the description of the podcast, we're actually going to put some links where you can look up and find out ways to work with Eric over in Daytona. So take a look at the description. But Eric, you've also helped coach the Embry-Riddle hockey team, and you're a volunteer assistant at UVM, your alma mater. What is that like to go back to your alma mater and help coach that team?
Oh man, I can't tell you that first time when I went back. Super nervous. I felt like a rookie again and going to pro hockey, because it's been a lot of years since I've been there, and the game's changed a lot in college hockey. And so when you're coming in the middle of at first the gig was more coming to help out. One of the coaches was coaching Slovakia in the World Juniors, so they were allowed to have an assistant come in and help out on the ice and stuff like that, not behind the bench, but on the ice, and do so it was great. I got all in and started helping a lot of the players, doing skills, video, in the coaches meetings, and maybe trying to give my 2 cents here and there about certain things. But it was about getting to know the coaches first too, and getting to know their philosophy and their vision, and just try not to step on toes and align yourself with the same stuff. And it's been great. Those guys, man, welcome me, and it's been really awesome working with those guys. Last year I was able to go twice, beginning of the year and Christmas again, and just you start building more relationships with the players and a little bit more trust when you go and with your conversations and talk about hockey. And so that's been super awesome. And then you get to see old faces that are still around from when I was there, and which is incredible. We're coming up on almost 30 years, which is nuts. Well, think about it.
Yeah,
So
no, tell me about it.
Yeah, but all those experience, man, I can't lie, is giving me the itch, about that level, and just seeing those kids. They're still kids that just the desire to learn, they want it, and they want to learn more, and they want to be taught, and they want to be coached, and just that was special for me. But that gave me the itch of like, man, I it's something that I definitely want to kind of pursue, as we go along here for me.
Well, Eric, I hope you're able to get where you want to go coaching wise, because I can tell you still have the passion for the game, the love of the game. I can't thank you enough for joining us today. I really hope that everything goes well in Daytona. And again, tell everyone where they can find information on the Daytona Ice Arena and your junior programs.
Yeah, they can go to our website, DaytonaIceArena.com. They got my information on there, email, phone number, reach out to me anytime. And yeah, we got stuff posted, Facebook page, Daytona Ice Arena Hockey Information Facebook page. All our stuff is on there. Daytona Ice Arena. I think we have an official Daytona Ice Arena page as well. So yeah, we're out there, not as much as we would want, but yeah, that's what we do well, is we develop players from learn to play, learn to skate, to rec league, to travel. And it's been growing like crazy, especially with Florida NHL teams having success.
Well, Eric, hey, nothing but the best. Thank you very much for joining us today, and best of luck to you.
I appreciate you, Jason. Thank you for having me,
Thanks.
man.
Anytime. Take care, Aaron. I hope you really enjoyed the interview. Eric was gracious enough to give us over an hour of his time, really went into detail throughout his career and what he's doing today at the Daytona Ice Arena. I am going to put in the description ways that you can contact the Daytona Ice Arena if you're interested in working with their youth program, if you're interested in having your son or daughter try out for it, or if you're looking for lessons for your son or daughter to improve their hockey skills. It'll be in the show notes. I do have to say that one of the first interviews I really did with a major athlete, when I was at Fox Sports Radio in Southern Connecticut, it was Christopher Higgins. And Christopher Higgins went to Yale, which was right near the studio where I did my show. And he was drafted by the Montreal Canadiens, and he was projected to be a big-time prospect. Now, Christopher Higgins ended up having a nice career in the NHL. But I just remember that interview that I only had really about 8 or 9 minutes, and I only had 2 or 3 questions to ask him. And having a format like podcasting where I can talk to someone like Eric Perrin, who's experienced what he has, and to allow him to go into detail and ask more clarifying questions, it was an absolute joy. So I really appreciate Eric's time. I hope you enjoyed the interview, and we hope to have more of those coming up in the future. As I always conclude every show, you can follow Justin on Raw Charge at www.rawcharge.com. I'm Jason Linkus. We appreciate your time. Please hit that like and subscribe button. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to send us an email at backcheckingthebolts@yahoo.com. Have a great day, everyone, and go Bolts.